Welcome back to the Council 36 podcast. I am your host, Daisha. I hope everyone is doing well during these extremely tough times. You know, the coronavirus cases have been surging over the past few weeks. So I don't know if you heard, I'm sure you have heard, but Governor Newsom has tightened the restrictions again. So hopefully we can begin to flatten the curve again. And hopefully during these times, we can find little things that bring us joy and happiness, while also being safe. That's extremely, extremely important. And so I'm actually a little excited to finally be moving into 2021. Hopefully, 2021 will be a better year. I'm keeping my hopes up. Wishful thinking, you know. But speaking of COVID 19, the LA County Board of Supervisors recently passed an anti retaliation ordinance. The ordinance will protect workers who report COVID 19 health and safety violations. The Los Angeles Federation of Labor has really been pushing for this ordinance. So thank you to everyone who helped out, who really, made some effort to get this passed because it'll protect a lot of our members and our workers who are afraid that, they're going to be discriminated against or retaliated against because they're, making the public health department aware of these violations. So thank you to everybody for that. Next up, I want to introduce a new segment called the Union Corner, where we discuss some of the most important information you need to know about labor unions. It's been something that we've been working on for a while now, and so we're happy to finally introduce it to you all, and hopefully you can find some good information in these segments and hopefully you can implement them in your workplace. So, I'm joined today by business rep Leticia, who is a representative for Local 127, the City of San Diego, and the City of Coronado. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Daisha. I love the opportunity to share with you some information about the field.
So today's topic is going to be know your contract, know your rights. So first, let's start with what is a union contract?
A union contract, usually referred to as a collective bargaining agreement under the law, the Public Employees Relation Board has defined it as a binding agreement between the state, county, or municipality or school district with the exclusive representative, AFSCME, as it is in this particular matter with regards to the City of San Diego or the City of Coronado, where we are in binding agreements, collective bargaining agreements with each respective city and AFSCME and our local.
Okay, so next, what would you say is or are some of the most important parts of a union contract?
Definitely is the voice of our members, right? Our members that we represent have a direct effect to the 5 areas that I consider the strongest parts of a contract, which is the wages, which is their benefits, which is number 3, the working conditions, number 4, job protections, and number 5, knowing your rights to have leave. There is definitely, when you look at the strength of a contract, it involves our ability to negotiate, as AFSCME, the wages, hours, and working conditions of the employees that we represent at a city, a municipality, county, or a school district. So for us, the power is on our ability to collectively bargain on behalf of our members.
Okay, and so what are the union rights as far as a contract goes?
So for us, our ability as exclusive representative for AFSCME is we have the ability to negotiate contract language that provides rights to employees. For example, a non-discrimination article is important where our employees feel protected for speaking up or for enforcing their contract. For example, a grievance article, or the right to take a particular type of leave, or for example, the ability for us to speak up and stand up for seniority, our ability to ensure that our members have retirement and pension and have something to look forward to after dedicating their years of service to the employer. And so for us, we have ability to negotiate and ensure that our contracts are strong and our members' rights being protected through this binding agreement.
Okay, and last, what is the best way for a union member to access their contract?
Thanks, Dacia. That's a wonderful question. For us is that our members can have access to their collective bargaining agreement, to their memorandum of understanding on the union board at their work site. You're able to not only access it, but also download it through either the employer's website or the local's District Council 36 website or its actual local website, where they can reach out and get a hold of their president, their steward, or their business representative to ensure that they understand accessing the MOU, the collective bargaining agreement, so they know their rights and they can enforce them right at the work site.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that information with me. If you're a union member, make sure you know your contract. It is important and it is vital to having an amazing workplace. So if you don't already have access to it, make sure you reach out to your locals, to your union presidents to get access to it, and make sure you read it from cover to cover. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dacia. Remember to know your contract and be a voice at the work site. AFSCME strong.
Now to the interview. Okay, joining me today, I have Aiko, who is a member of Local 946. Thank you for joining me. Can you start by introducing yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Aiko Marcial Rivera. I am currently a paralegal with Aesthetic Legal Services. I am an immigrant. I have DACA, and I actually just joined Aesthetic this June, so I haven't been part of the family for for a long time yet.
Well, thank you. We're glad to have you. We're glad to have you. So can you describe a little bit about what you do at work?
Yeah, so I joined Bethzetic this June as part of the paralegal for the Employment Rights Project. And it's the first time that the project has had a paralegal, which is really like bizarre to me just because of the amazing work that they do. So we provide services to low income folks in LA County only, and regardless of immigration status, which is like amazing to me. And it was one of the reasons why I was drawn to this job position, because I just wanted to serve immigrants at a different capacity. So we provide services. Folks come to us with different types of employment issues. So a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of wage theft, specifically for undocumented workers. They're the most vulnerable workers. So a lot of them do come to us because a lot of day laborers who have, done a job and don't get paid and don't really know what their rights are or what they can do. And we help them through the labor commissioners process. Those are just like some of the things that we do. We also work closely with a lot of community partners. So a lot of community centers like the Garment Worker Center. We work with domestic workers. So we work with the California Domestic Worker Coalition, and just providing know your rights to them. That's mostly what the attorneys do. Right now, my role has been mostly coordinating our weekly clinics. So we have clinics Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we have a hotline where folks can call, and we usually pre-screen folks and then add them to the list and just have volunteers help us call, and that's where some of our cases come from. Also, some of our cases come from our community partners. Yeah, so that's basically what I do.
So have things been a little more hectic because of the pandemic?
Extremely hectic. Actually, when I joined, like the program itself has been going through a lot of like transitions. But yeah, when I joined, I literally was expected to hit the ground running, and I kind of just like expected that. Specifically just because at our clinics, as was explained to me in the past, like a lot of folks that do come to our clinics are folks that are needing help with like wage claims. And now the majority of the folks that come to us are they're needing help with the unemployment insurance and the and PUA. So just like not applying for PUA or like unemployment insurance because we don't help with that. It's more so like in the later stage of like I've applied, I haven't received anything, like ADD hasn't sent me anything, or I've applied and like I got rejected and I don't know why, or just other hiccups that they have experienced, and that has been a bit over like a lot of the work that we have been doing and just trying to understand um that process. I actually didn't I was not familiar with unemployment insurance or PUA or anything like that, so that's something that I learned on this job.
Wow, that yeah, I can only imagine the amount of work you guys have because this whole pandemic has been just, overwhelming to say the least. And so I know that there are a lot of people out there who are struggling, especially, with unemployment and wages and all of that. So I'm happy that you guys are there to, help them out. Absolutely. Um, so you are new to Bethsedic, but like at your previous job or before that, were you a part of a union or did they have a union?
Yeah, so I actually come from the immigration world, which is like so bizarre to think that I like got a new job during a pandemic and just switched completely. Like, I guess they're not that different, but so yeah, I was part of the IAM in my previous job. I worked at a nonprofit that was immigration based. So we were unionized or we decided to form a union with the IAM. So the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. I usually always get it wrong, but I got it right. Which is like when I first heard about like the name of the union, I was like, that has nothing to do with the work that we do. But I was also just learning about like, what a union is and what unions do. I mean, I did have some background of unions, but I wasn't really like, really in the labor movement. I was more focused on the immigrant rights movement. Um, but yeah, I was really involved with the union. I was part of the bargaining committee, and I was also like part of the efforts to have folks like sign on to like to become unionized, and just talking to folks who also didn't know what a union was, like, which was really like interesting to me because a lot of people were just like, oh, aren't unions bad? And I'm just like, no, they're good. Like you would think as a social justice like
Right.
oriented organization, like folks would know what a union was and be more inclined to join a union. But yeah, I was part of the bargaining committee, so I was there from the beginning to the end of the process. I actually so the first contract ratified January of this year,
Oh,
and
wow.
so yeah, so then I left in June, so I was part from like beginning to end, so I saw everything, and it was a very like for me it was a really good experience to see. And also it was like an eye opener for me just being at the bargaining table with like management and just realizing how they really felt about things, because you don't really know, because they just paint this image and then it's like no, like there's more to it. So I really enjoyed that.
Okay. And I see that you had registered for a steward's training, which um, I'll talk about again in a second. But are you looking to like get more involved with Local 946 in Bethsedic?
Yeah, I am looking to get more involved. I mean, I at the beginning I was just happy to be at another place that was union, right? And I feel like for me, having that experience, like I'm never gonna work at a job that's not unionized. So I have been interested just because I was gonna be one of the stewards, right? At my previous job, but obviously I left.
Hmm.
So I still wanted to get that experience of what it was like. And I know for Bethsedic, things are like structured differently, which to me was really impressive how like how things are structured, how there's like a whole committee of
Yep.
folks, like, willing, like, like there's different committees for everything. And just like board, like e-board,
Yep.
like the fact that they have that compared to what I'm coming from, where like there was like 4 or 5 of us that were in the bargaining committee. Being new, like I was just like, okay, like I don't really know where I fit in, just trying to figure out like how I can help. And I did register for the steward training just because I didn't get a training, unfortunately, before I left. Like I was set to get a training, but then COVID happened. So
Right.
like, they were just like restructuring how they were gonna conduct steward trainings. And I mean, I still wanted to get that, even if I wasn't gonna be a steward. I'm like, I still wanna know, what it entails.
Right, right. And so that kind of leads me into my next point because I was, you know, going through the internet like I usually do, and I came across this poem
Mhm.
and I was like, oh, I love this. This is amazing. And so I read the name and I said, okay, I know this name, right? I was like, where do I know this name from? So I Googled it. And of course, Bet Said It came up. And I was like, that's what it was because I remember seeing your name for the stewards training
Yeah.
registration. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's one of our members. Like, I have to get her on the podcast. So, can I read your poem? I want to read your poem so that everybody can know how amazing it
Of
was.
course, yes, you can go ahead and read it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the title of it is Soy una bella afro-mexicana.
Mhm.
You ask yourself, what is that? Es una mezcla de la cultura africana y mexicana. I come from a lineage of former African slaves that arrived on the shores of Veracruz along with Cortez para la conquista. I come from the womb of a beautiful brown mestiza woman. De los montañas de Guerrero, I am a product of my community que lucha para una vida mejor. Undocumented people fearing deportation or peor. Day laborers trying to feed their families, single mothers tratando de sacar a sus hijos adelante, people of color harassed and brutalized by the ICE, police.
Mhm.
Beautiful brown and black youth feeling helpless. I am a product of a hardworking single mother who immigrated into this country to give her children a better life. I am a woman who will not tolerate anyone who refers to my mother as a, and I will toss it to you to say that next line.
Yeah, so wetback, illegal, or illegal alien.
Yes. I am a woman who is easily motivated when I stare at my mother's fatigued body from working 2 jobs. I am a woman who is in the struggle to attain a higher education in order to make my mother's life a bit easier. I am a woman who fights against her own dehumanization and still has the strength to fight the dehumanization of her people and community. I aspire to inspire powerful and beautiful young women and men of color that feel invisible. I aspire to someday give back to those who helped me get to where I am and where I will be. The fears I hold are not only mine, the fears I hold are the same as my mother's, my brother's, and my sister's. My fears are reflected in a community that is constantly preyed upon by the police, ICE, and gritty businessmen displacing my people. You ask me who I am all of this combined into one powerful and beautiful Afro Mexicana. Yay! So yeah, I read that and I was like, whoa, I love this. And so one, what made you write that poem? And two, kind of tell me a little bit about the organization Punto Rojo.
Yeah. So I wrote that poem. It was like a class assignment, but really like I felt like I was just at a point where I felt lost, and I was like, okay, well, I don't really like know, like, again, like who I am or what I bring to the table, right? And it was during like my freshman year in college, which like for me was like, I'm, undocumented, low income, and I'm here at, like UCLA, and like I'm really not supposed to be here, and just feeling that like survivor's guilt, right? Of like, okay, do I really belong here?
Yeah.
Or like just like questioning my ability and myself, which like unfortunately those institutions are like, set up to like make you feel that way. um So I, it was an assignment, and I was just like, okay, I don't care. Like, I'm just gonna put Spanish words in there. I don't care if, like, if I get a bad grade, but this is how I really feel. So like, I was feeling like just lost, insecure in that setting. And it's just like, I guess for me, I found it very therapeutic just writing. Yeah, just reminding myself of like who I am and like where I come from and like how resilient I am, instead of just feeling like guilty for being there. Just like, "Oh, no, like literally, like you deserve to be here, and you have like a lot to bring. Like, you're very different. Like, your background is very different. Like, your mom works two jobs. Like, I have my sister also worked two jobs, and like, unfortunately, like, my brother was, no longer with us here in the US because he was deported. So it's just
Mm,
like, like, all this happened, and like, like, you were set up to fail, but you didn't, and you should feel really proud about that. And also, specifically for me, it was like, just like my identity as being like Afro Latina, right? Up, and I grew up in Orange County. So I wouldn't say the most, but like San Diego and Orange County, like, very conservative counties in California, where like really it's just a bunch of white people, and you really don't see anything else.
right.
So, just coming into a place that, has like quote unquote diversity, but not really, again. Just like, okay, where do I fit in? Just because I know, from mentors, I was told like, oh, you're gonna have your Latino community, but like, getting to college, not really finding a connection to the Latino community, just because like it's very like, oh, mestizo like centered, and to a certain extent anti-black. And
Hmm.
I'm just like, well, like, my dad's Afro-Mexican. Like, I come from Guerrero, which is one of the poorest states in Mexico. um like, just like questioning that, and just seeing like where I fit in into like everything, and being okay with like not fitting in, and being like my authentic self, which is like Afro-Mexican, undocumented. um and just like me writing that, just kind of, it was just like, very therapeutic, and it was like self-affirming for writing this. And I'm not even a poet. I think after writing this, I did start like writing just for myself, like whenever I was feeling stressed or anxious or like insecure. So I don't really I don't really share a lot of like those writings, except like this one, because I was like, I'm really proud of this. And like, when people ask me like, oh, and it like, who are you, basically like comes from like, when people like meet me, they're like, oh, what are you like Mexican, or are you black? And I'm just like, well, I'm both, like,
Right.
you know and just people being confused, where like they're like, wait, like, and it was also like, I think during the time where like the whole Blaxican term was like
Mm,
popular. And for me, like, I don't identify as Blaxican, just because my understanding of Blaxican is like having in like African American parent and then a Mexican parent, and like both my parents are Mexican, so there's
right.
just like those layers of like, black people exist in Latin America, and like, you all need to like understand that. Like, like, you, it's just like, black people exist everywhere, like,
Right.
just understanding that, and like educating folks on that, is why I shared this poem too, because I'm like, like, if you care about me, if you want to be around me, if you want to associate with me, like, you need to understand like these intersectionalities.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love that, because it's been a huge conversation, especially on social media. I think it happens every so often where like a non-black Latino or Latino person will, say something, and then black Latinos will be like, wait a minute, like I do exist, right? Because a lot of times the Afro Latino community can be excluded from certain conversations. So that was one of the reasons why I loved it. I was like, yes, I love, hearing and reading things like this. Um, so then, in your poem, you talk about some of the things that you want to accomplish. And I feel like at your job, represented undocumented immigrants, you are accomplishing those things. So kind of what made you want to be a part of the labor movement, especially since you are already a part of kind of like the immigrant movement?
Yeah, so for me, everything that I do usually draws back from like my experiences or like people I know, right? And at my previous job, like I got to the point where I felt like I wasn't really learning anything. I was just going through the motions. And I've always been intrigued in the labor movement. I did a minor in labor and workplace studies when I was at UCLA. So I did get like, just like the backgrounds of it, and I never really like I was never really an organizer in the movement. I never worked for any unions or internship or did an internship for any unions. So because of my previous job, like I wasn't learning anything and I was just craving to like learn something new. That kind of pushed me. I'm like, okay, well maybe it's a good time to do that transition, right, into the labor movement, and also being like heavily influenced with my involvement in the union. I'm just like, well, yeah, like, this was very interesting, but I really want to know how it intersects with like workers, like especially undocumented workers, immigrant workers, excuse me. Yeah, so that's like what pushed me to do this. And I also like, I feel like this specific job like was very ideal because it combined all my skills, right? Like I was previously an organizer in the immigrant rights movement and a paralegal at my job. So I'm like, this job literally combines like the person that I am. Like my background is organizing, and in organizing, like some people in specifically my experience, like I was a youth organizer, so there was a time where I'm like, okay, I'm no longer a youth, so it makes no sense for me to continue organizing, right? So just like transitioning into like something else, which helping in a different capacity, which was like me being like a immigration paralegal. So just trying to transition into something new, but also trying to see how I can expand my knowledge and how I can continue serving immigrants, but at a different capacity.
Right. It's a, yeah. So as far as being a part of like the immigrant movement, what is some of the work that you've done? Because you said you're a youth organizer, so kind of like talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was a youth organizer for a few years, undocumented youth organizer specifically. So it's like providing empowerment to high school youth, that undocumented youth specifically, and providing like political context of the immigrant rights movement, right? So I know earlier I talked about like me questioning like, oh, like my identity and like where I come from. So letting them know like you're undocumented, but that doesn't mean like you're less of a human being than someone else, right? Just because like we hear these things like political rhetoric like at a national level, and like unfortunately some people like believe that and like perpetuate that, right? Like the good immigrant versus bad immigrant
Yep.
narrative, and dismantling that, like, and just think beyond like being undocumented, like you're a person, like you have a lot to bring, you have skills, right? It's not like I'm undocumented and that's it, like no, there's like more to you. So providing like those tools of empowerment to youth so that they can also like educate others, was basically what I did as a youth organizer.
Yeah, so I think you actually answered what was my last question was about, intersectionality, right? So you kind of talked about the immigrant movement and the labor movement and how they intersect. Are there any other like movements or activism that you're like a part of, or are those kind of like the main two movements?
Yeah, those are just like the main two that I have been a part of. I mean, I'm a right now baby in the labor movement. I have only been with aesthetics since June, but I am really excited to continue learning and to see what I can contribute. But yeah, I think they both intersect. Workers' rights are immigrant rights. So
Right.
specifically just because like those that are exploited the most are folks who are undocumented, just because a lot of them think that that they have no protections, right? And a lot of employers, sorry, feel like they don't have protection, so they can just like do whatever they want with undocumented workers, and also
Right.
like they intimidate them. So I feel like both movements intersect.
Yeah, they do. They do a lot. And so I'm happy that, you're working on both because, they're very important. And, we definitely need more protections for immigrants. And I know that the labor movement is one of those, movements that, works hard to try and protect, undocumented immigrants. Yeah, and I know that you'll be more and more involved with Council 36. We're always looking for passionate people who, are excited about these sorts of things. So I know that you'll be great. And I can't wait to see kind of what you do as far as, Council 36 and, Beth Sedek. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. You taking the time. And yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you for having me on.
Thank you to everybody who listened to episode 3 of the Council 36 podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I will see you next time.